Welcome to Speak with Purpose, a celebration of thought and influence, where bold ideas ignite action. Join Christine Gagnon and the TEDxCatawba community in shaping the future.
Hello, everyone. I'm Christine Gagnon, founder and organizer of TEDxCatawba. We're here today to introduce one of our esteemed speakers for a 2025 event to be held here in Hickory, North Carolina on June 14th at the Drendel Auditorium. I'm joined today by Rob Sweetman. He's a former Navy SEAL, SEAL Team 7, turned sleep scientist, dedicated to optimizing human performance through sleep. As a founder of Sleep Genius, he develops cutting-edge sleep solutions for military personnel, first responders, and high-performance professionals. He has advised military leaders and executives on the role of sleep in decision-making, resilience, and longevity. Welcome, Rob. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Christine. How are you?
I am good. I mean, I could always use more sleep. I have a broken foot.
That
So we'll
can cause
definitely...
sleep issues. Yeah.
Oh, actually, not to go off on a tangent so early in our talk, but I was saying to a friend that actually I'm so sleepy with this broken bone, I don't even know. So it's almost like a sleep blessing in disguise. But we will definitely get there. So I found your background intriguing, and I think I told you a story. So when I was in high school, I wanted to go in the military. I'm not kidding. And I bought 2 books. One was a book on going into the Marine Corps. I know there might be a lot of debate here. And the other was, a book on Navy SEALs. And I know that obviously with gender and all of that, that would be an insurmountable, aspiration. But I was just so intrigued by that career path, by that just sort of elite status. So I would love to know from you, have you always wanted to be a Navy SEAL? Like, tell me a little bit about your story. Tell our listeners.
No, I didn't know much about the Navy SEALs getting out of high school or growing up. Actually, I didn't join the SEAL teams until I was 29 years old. And the
Wow.
cutoff is 28. And so you sign the dotted line before you turn 29 and you're good. Beyond that, I think you have to have a waiver. I'm not sure if that's changed. So at the ripe old age of 28, I decided to join the SEAL teams. Now, I didn't really know exactly what direction I wanted to go, but I definitely wanted to serve my country. I felt like I was an entrepreneur at the time. I felt like I was leading a meaningless life, just chasing money, and I wanted to serve my country. I had a deep patriotic spirit, and so I signed up at 28. I was in the delayed entry program for like 6 months to kind of sort out some of my own personal things. And then at about 28 and a half, I actually left for basic training. After that, I went to Coronado. I made it out there. A lot of people never even made it that far. There's a tremendous amount of test gates and things to eliminate you before you even get to Coronado. So it's quite an honor to actually show up in Coronado where they do the SEAL training. That's the first set of obstacles to make it that far. I showed up on my birthday that summer.
Oh,
And
wow.
as I turned 29, I began what would be the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, which is Navy SEAL training. Everybody quits. Nobody makes it. It's a very few amount of people that can navigate this. And I was one of the fortunate ones to make it through.
Is that called buds? Is that what it had the right terminology, or is that different?
Yeah, buds. We kind of look at it as an A school nowadays.
Okay.
In the past, it was not a big Navy school, and they just called it buds. But yes, that's correct. It is still buds. It's Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL School. So that means
Ah.
we're underwater, just like our UDT grandfathers from World War II. And then demolition experts, right? And we also have some roots in the Scouts and Raiders of World War II. A lot of this came from World War II, the roots, but it wasn't until Kennedy, and I think 1965, established the SEAL teams. And it was beautiful because Army has done a lot of special forces type things, but when they
Hmm.
instituted the Navy SEAL teams, that was different. That was in the Navy. Typically, Navy is on ships, they're on the ocean. And so there isn't really a ton of doctrine sort of outlining how we do business. So when the SEAL teams came in, we pretty much could do whatever we wanted to do. And we're in a maritime environment. So all of a sudden we had incredible capabilities with zero restraint, and we're able to get missions done that no one else could for a ton of different reasons. And that began the legacy of where we're at today.
That's amazing. And I remember doing some research on your background before we formally met, and I recall watching a podcast, and I hope I heard this correctly. And this is I thought I was heroic, dancing on a broken foot at TED last week, but you sort of bring this to on a new level in so many ways. But did you say on a podcast that you had multiple injuries in training and you were able to sort of overcome those and finish? And how early did those injuries happen? And how did you even get into the mindset of being able to finish? Because they sounded rather significant.
Yeah, I guess let's define an injury, right? There's injuries that you should just work through, and there's injuries that are debilitating. There's a very different scale for a Navy SEAL on pain tolerance, on whether you can continue or not. Basically, if you're going to die, that's when a Navy SEAL will not continue. Anything that does not constitute complete disability of the spine, a fracture of the skull, a completely broken leg, you know, bleeding, you're bleeding out, like unless it's one of those, we're probably going to keep going. And so that is one of the reasons why so few people can make it, because you will sustain multiple injuries through training. It's not a question of if, it's how bad is it going to get and how much can you take, and is it going to
Wow.
be so bad that you get pulled from training. I mean, I don't want to highlight myself. I'd like to talk about another one of my teammates
Okay.
that at the end of training, because all of us, worked our butts off to make it through Hell Week. It's an entire week of being awake and training nonstop. You can imagine the injuries that you accumulate. But this one individual had pushed himself and his body so hard that he snapped one of his femurs, and so he basically couldn't walk. Anytime he put pressure on the leg, it was excruciating pain. And I remember Friday, we'd already been awake for 5.5 days, and we're finishing up Hell Week. And by the way, the entire time in Hell Week, we've got what's called an IBS. It's a 150-pound inflatable boat above our head. It's bouncing on our head the entire time. We have a boat crew of like 5 or 6 people, at 7 people if you have your team leader there. And the boat is elevated above your head. You're balancing it on your head. It's bouncing. And we're at the final stages. We've been out there this entire time. I mean, we've been through delusions and hypothermia and heat exhaustion, and everyone's gone. There's only a few people left, a few boat teams left. I think our class started with almost 300 people, and we had maybe 60 people on that finishing leg. And I looked over at my friend. His name will remain anonymous because he's still active, but he is walking on this broken leg. And I remember us changing the position of the boat crew so that in a way that he could put his arm around me and around another guy, but we still had the boat balancing on our heads as we're running down the beach in Coronado. And Chief Bloom, he's now out. He was the proctor of our Buds class. He came up to us and he's like, "What the hell are you doing? What's wrong with this guy?" Because if you're injured and you're not able to continue, you get rolled out, and your dreams of becoming a Navy SEAL are over. And that is truthfully the result of nearly every single person that goes through this training. Either they psychologically cannot take it, it's too much, or they medically get dropped because they're broken for some reason. And broken legs are very common. And so this guy is hobbling on one foot, and we're managing to carry him. And something very powerful happened in that moment. We looked over at our chief, and mind you, this is a terrifying thing to say anything to the instructors, because you're deathly terrified of them singling you out and torturing you until you quit. So it's a very risky thing to even open up your mouth. And I remember looking over to Chief Bloom and I said, "Chief, we got him." And the way that I looked at him in the eyes was, this is our teammate and we will carry him back no matter what. And that's the biggest lesson I think coming from Buds, is that you cannot make it alone. You have to make it as a team. And as a boat crew, we finished and we carried him to the end of Buds. He was able to complete Buds. He was able to get the medical care he needed after that. but he wasn't medically dropped, which would typically be the case. And at that moment, Chief Bloom knew that this was a team effort and that we were carrying a man that deserved to be there on the final leg. And so it was very powerful. This is a very common story of people getting hurt, but very uncommon that we were able to as a team, push him through on that last leg. And he then became a Navy SEAL.
That's tremendous. I always envisioned in my head that it was, I know that the Navy SEAL spirit is, to take care of the team, don't leave people behind, but when I think about training, I think about competitive pressures and, fending for yourself. So I love that story of camaraderie because I think it speaks to the spirit of what a Navy SEAL really is from someone as naive as myself on the subject matter. So that I really love that story. How long did you spend with the SEALs?
I was in the SEAL teams for 8 years. I did sustain multiple injuries in buds. I had to have surgery afterwards. Lots of injuries to the point where at the end of my 8 year period, I was medically retired from an injured back. My spine, they
Wow.
were recommending a 3 level fusion surgery on my spine. I declined and they med boarded me out of the Navy. I could no longer perform at the very high level that's required in the SEAL teams. So 8 years, typical enlistment is 6 years. So I'm really happy to have made it 8 years. If I could have made it 20 years and beyond, I would have. It's the best job in the military.
Wow. And so when I'm sorry to hear about your injury. That sounds severe. How did you work through that, right? So since you said, "Hey, I would have done this until I couldn't do it anymore," and to find out, you have this injury and, you can't sustain that career choice, what was going through your mind? And obviously we talked about that there was this transition you had to go through, but can you talk our listeners through a little bit of that journey?
Which part of the journey are you referring to, the transition?
Yeah, the transition, maybe initially just knowing I would have done this for 20 years, but I can't do it anymore. So that initially sounds like something that might bring up a whole lot of emotion, but then you're fairly resilient as we know. And so there's a pivot there as well. So maybe talk about both or whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah, I mean, SEALs are humans just like everybody else. And, perhaps the fallacy that we can't be hurt is our ultimate detriment, right? Because absolutely, SEALs are coming back from deployment with post-traumatic stress, traumatic brain injury, lots of orthopedic injuries, lots of sleep issues, I mean, we just went on Fox last night and we talked about the 4 million gallons of waste that's being dumped into the Pacific Ocean right where we train from Tijuana. People are getting GERD, people are getting MRSA, people are getting all types of things because the conditions are so bad. And by the way, it never gets easier. We have a saying, the only easy day was yesterday, because every single day
Mm,
is hard. You think you're going to make it through training and all of a sudden you've made it and everything's going to be easy. It's quite the opposite. You tried out for the job so that you could do the job. So transitioning out with such a big injury was absolutely depressing. I
mm,
sank into depression. I felt like I don't know if I'm a man anymore. I don't know, I definitely can't perform at the same level. I'm not sure like what my usefulness is in this world. I can't be a SEAL. I couldn't stand up straight and do the things that I physically wanted to do. Perhaps I couldn't be a good father. Perhaps I couldn't be a good spouse. All these things were going through my mind. And so I absolutely sunk into depression. It was a very difficult transition. And I had to really redefine myself. Like, who am I? How can I serve beyond the teams and be valuable? These questions were things that I pondered over for a long time, and it took several years to be able to define my value as a person outside of being a Navy SEAL.
mm. That sounds gut wrenching, to be candid. And again, I feel for you, although I don't know what that feels like, if that makes any sense. Tell me, when you go through something like that, which is tremendously destabilizing, and you've obviously come out the other side. What was that moment? where it clicked that you were going to do something different? I think we had talked about that you actually didn't get the surgery. Am I right? And then along those lines, your journey and your maybe next calling sort of came into play. Can you walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, that's right, Christine. At the same time, I was dealing with everything that I just described. In 2017, my friend and teammate in the SEAL teams, Ryan Larkin, and by the way, let me say, Ryan Larkin, his father was a Navy SEAL, Frank, and Ryan comes in and he becomes a sniper. That's the school that everybody wants to go to and get that qualification. And then he was a medic. Medics are sought after. So these are the two best courses. And so, really, Ryan was a bit of a golden child, right? And then in 2017, he took his life. So I looked at Ryan's suicide as really earmark for some much needed change in the SEAL teams and in the military. And I searched high and low to find an answer. What I observed was his sleep health was getting worse and worse. That's what I could see, but I didn't know if sleep had anything to do with mental health or physical health or anything like that. But I had a suspicion, and so I began at Balboa Medical Center asking doctors, MDs, hey, what do you know about sleep? Tell me how sleep works. And to my surprise, the medical doctors had very little to offer in terms of sleep science and answers. It wasn't until I started digging in with the PhDs in neurophysiology, neurobiology, circadian sciences, and cognitive sciences that I really started to find out, oh, there's a very big relationship between sleep health and mental health. And so, my best assumption about what happened with Ryan is that his sleep health impacted his mental health and led to his ultimate demise. So, at that moment, I dedicated my life to sleep science. That's been my mission for 8 years. And I have been aggressively seeking answers for warfighters as well as first responders. And I can't save Ryan, but perhaps I can save people like him.
I hope so. When we look at sleep, so I think I've looked at sleep from a few different lenses. I've had some, they pale in comparison in terms of pressure, but for desk jobs, high high pressure sedentary jobs, and I can see the impact of sleep or lack of sleep. And I wholeheartedly agree, although that is not necessarily my scientific view. I haven't researched it as much as you. I'm not the sleep genius. But are there any observations you would call out to say, fun fact, this is what happens when you don't get sleep, or anything that stands out to you that might help our audience to realize how important sleep really is? Like I can't get by in 4 hours of sleep. I just can't even function. But maybe just some insight into your thinking and your philosophies.
Absolutely. By the way, I did not come up with the name Sleep Genius. I was named the Sleep Genius after I helped a cohort of Navy SEALs through a sleep program that I developed. I was given that name, so I took it, but it would be a little hubris for me to call myself that. So I just want to give that disclaimer.
Well, I'll call
However,
you it. I love it.
I'll take it. So when we look at sleep, as you approach, let's say, 20 hours of being awake, your cognitive performance is equal to that of being legally inebriated by alcohol. We call that the blood alcohol equivalency. And there's charts to show how your cognition declines the longer you've been awake. Everybody knows if you're pulling an all-nighter, you're a little bit out of it. But how out of it are you? In fact, you don't even realize how bad it is. And once you get to that 24-hour mark, you're a 0.10. Now, we can also achieve the same cognitive declination with 1 hour of sleep deprivation per night, every night for 5 consecutive nights. Meaning, if you normally sleep, let's say 7.5 hours, and you're only getting 6.5, and you do that 5 nights in a row, you're a 0.08 according to the charts. So that's just in the short term. Sleep deprivation as well as fatigue lead to a reduced heart rate variability, increased stress, lower cognition. And so you're not on your A game for sure. And we have
Mm.
tons of research to show not only are you more efficient and a better performer with better sleep, But as you try to sleep deprive to get the job done, let's say at work, your performance, efficiency, and all of that goes down. In fact, at UCSD, my alma mater, they've done research to show that your lifetime earning capacity is directly linked to your sleep performance. So that's just in the short term, but looking at an
Wow.
entire life, you can develop some significant mental health and physical health problems. For example, one of the issues in the Navy was they were working these five and dimes. A five and dime is 5 and 10, meaning you're on shift for 5 hours, off shift for 10 hours. That's a 15-hour day, and then you rinse, wash, and repeat every single day. That 15-hour day model was causing people's hormones and circadian rhythms to be so out of sync that they're developing hypertension, they're developing cancer, they're developing every major issue that a human being can have as they lead up to the end of their life. But these are people in their prime developing these significant issues. So we've since then designed the circadian watch bill, and people are getting more on a 24-hour shift, and that's better. But I would say, to answer your question, if you're not getting good sleep, it will not only impact the quality of your life, but you will live a shorter life. That's just what the statistics say.
That's really scary. And this is a random question. It's a selfish question. May I ask you a selfish question?
Of course.
So if one asking for a friend were to say not get the best sleep for, the 6 days in a row, like you mentioned, kind of that deficit and it accumulates over time. Can you just sleep it off on a Sunday by sleeping 12 hours, or does it not work like that?
It does not work like that. Now I'll say that with a grain of salt because I have firefighters that I coach that are working 72-hour shifts. So if you're awake for 72 hours, which by the way is never recommended, but let's say you're forced into that situation, there's wildfires in California or whatever. When you get done with that 72-hour shift, yes, you're absolutely going to bank your sleep and you're going to try to catch up on sleep as much as you can. We have something called sleep debt. It is a medical term, and it really refers to how you dive into deep sleep and start the restorative process in a different way than under a normal sleep cycling. But the fallacy of sleep depriving throughout the week and then banking it on the weekend, that does not work. And you are going to have negative health consequences from that. Now, is it better to sleep deprive throughout the week and then not catch up on sleep on the weekend? Of course not. You want to try to get as much sleep as possible to meet your threshold. Now, there is a bell curve. So let's say that you're sleeping on average 6 hours per night. That's probably not enough. I think the average for men is like 5 and 3/4 in the United States. It's not good. That's why we see so many health problems, including obesity and all types of inflammation. It's also nutrition. There's a number of different things that come into play here, but on the bell curve of health outcomes, if you're short sleeping, which is the majority of us in the US, you're going to have negative health outcomes. If you're within a healthy window, National Sleep Foundation says 7 to 9 hours. That's super generic. It's going to be different for every single person. But if you fall within a healthy range and you're getting good quality restorative sleep during that sleep period, you should be okay. But what's interesting is that once you go over that 8.5 and 9 hour mark, you also see higher rates of obesity and
Mm.
hypertension and health problems. So it's not necessarily good to get too much sleep on a regular basis. It's definitely not good to bank all of your sleep on the weekend. The best answer, and I know life is not perfect, but the best answer is always going to be consistent quality sleep in a quiet, dark, cold room where you can relax. You have that psychological safety. You have that routine of relaxation before you enter into sleep, and that's your best hope. So I would say, I know there's people out there that are thinking, I work like a dog all week. What can I do? You have to set your boundaries and try to get the best sleep you can each night because that is going to lead to the best long-term outcomes. Your family, your health, they're all relying on this. And so I would encourage everyone to try to do your best to put sleep first in your life.
I agree. I thought you might say that. So I'm disappointed I can't stock up and undo that debt on the weekend. But no, I love that. I feel so much better with the right amount of sleep. I could ask you 50,000 questions on this topic, but that'd be selfish. So I'll ask you another question. I think you're doing something, and I don't even know the words to ask the proper question, but you're doing something really cool in Colorado. Can you tell me what what you're up to and maybe give our audience a little more insight into what you're doing these days and what you're building? Because I'm also curious.
Yeah, that's a great question. And Colorado is a little bit of a secret project, right? Not a lot of people
Oh,
know what I'm.
did
No,
I
no,
did
it's
I
okay.
did I give away your secret?
No, it's because we haven't talked about it much. It's not because we're trying to keep it a secret. But here's the thing, I have tried to build sleep technology for people. I've tried to build programs to improve sleep. And at the end of the day, everyone finds resolution, specifically people with sleep problems I'm trying to help solve. They find their own resolution in different ways, and everyone's got a slightly different problem. Most of us are a little bit hypervigilant and can't put down the phones at night. That's a pretty common issue. But at the end of the day, I keep coming back to one simple truth, and that is that we all need to be just a little bit closer to nature. Things are easier when we wake up with the sun, we're grounded with the earth, we breathe fresh air, and we go to sleep as the sun goes down. That's, in essence, how our circadian timing works. There's a
Hmm.
reason why our natural circadian rhythm is roughly 24 hours a day. That is how the sun cycles, right? So my goal with Colorado, and part of it is selfish. I just want to be out in nature. But my goal in Colorado is to build a ranch. We call it Happy Canyon Ranch. It's happycanyonranch.org. And we want to do two big things. And these are lessons I've learned since I got out of the Navy. One is permaculture. This is sustainable organic farming interlaced with animals, uh, avoiding all types of hormones and injections and no pesticides on the plants. And the ecosystem works together within itself as nature intended it, without any of the modern crap that we try to put on humans and animals for that matter. The other part to Happy Canyon Ranch is this concept of earthen building structures. And what that means is we're building basically with mud and straw and grass and things like that. The reason why that's important is because since basically World War II and the Industrial Revolution and modern building materials, the list of chemicals and harsh additives to building materials is so bad. People don't even realize how it impacts their kids, it impacts their own health. And I don't really want to be a part of that. I just want to be out in nature. And so we're building with cob, we're building with super adobe, compressed earth block, hempcrete. All of these techniques are earthen building materials that have a negative carbon effect on the earth. And when you step inside one of these buildings that's built in this way, it just feels good. The walls actually breathe, they're vapor permeable. And so as the seasons change, the inside and the outside of the structure sort of are alive with the earth. And so stepping inside of one of these buildings, it feels good. The energy levels feel good. The air feels clean. And it's just a very different experience. So uh, to share this with the world, we're hosting retreats. We've only done one, and the property is relatively new. But coming into this 2025, we hope to have a couple more retreats where we're bringing people out there. Specifically, veterans and first responders are kind of my focus, but everyone's welcome. And we're building, I'm showing people how to build super adobe. So we're just going to be out in nature. Right now, it's just tent camping. We got lots of land out there, and it's truly, people that have come out there have told me that it's life changing. Just all of their stress melts away, and they feel supercharged going back to their normal life.
Wow, that sounds fantastic. Okay. Well, I'm going to pivot one more time before we wrap up and say, well, first of all, I'm very excited to have you at TEDx. So thank you so much for making the trip to spend some time with us. My question for you is based on what we're sort of planning behind the scenes, your talk might be fairly provocative and exciting. And we won't sort of give away too much to our audience because we love surprises. But if you were to think about maybe one or two things that you would like the audience to walk away with after your talk, can you give us a feel for that? Like, what do you hope to accomplish?
Let me think about this. Okay, so I don't want to give it away, but I will say that I want to talk about questions of humanity. I want to talk about right and wrong. I want to talk about the purpose in war, and I want to talk about the future. How are we handling um, warfare and the struggles that I've experienced so deeply? And so I'll leave it with that. I hope that anyone who's interested will be able to tune in to the TEDxCatawba. I am going to bring it, and I hope to leave the audience with a lot of positive thoughts.
Oh, well, I am sure that that will be the case. So, Rob, thank you so much for joining me today. We look forward to having you in Hickory, North Carolina on June 14th at TEDxCatawba.
Thank you so much.
To all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Tune in next week for another episode of Speak with Purpose to get insights into our speakers, sponsors, and partners for TEDxCatawba. You can also learn more about our independently organized TEDx event and purchase your tickets on our website, TEDxCatawba.com. We're also on social media. It's TEDxCatawba. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and X. Thank you so much and see you next week.